Hello and welcome to issue 617 of Geek in the City of Radio. I am one of your hosts, Aaron Duran.
I am one of your other hosts, Rita.
And I am your other host, Cable Hashtan.
How's it going, everybody?
What's shaking?
What's shaking? The problem, whenever I hear that, my brain goes to the old school opening of the show, which was always "What's shaking, Pone." So my brain always goes there. Yeah.
See, and I am following. One of the people I'm following on Instagram is a person with the last name of Bacon, and so her shtick is she starts her videos with "What's shaking, Bacon."
Nice.
I mean, you can't not.
No, you can't.
There's a rule. Someone wrote it down somewhere.
Yep. It's a weird rule. Why would you write it down? What's on the show tonight?
How are you guys doing?
I'm good. I'm tired. I made large things in my garage today, and I finished up like after 5. So I'm like ready. I was ready to rest. And I'm like, no, you can't rest. You have a show to do.
Yeah, I know. I feel that.
And then I horfed down all that ramen, and now I'm all hot and flush.
I'm fine. I have lined up all kinds of. I've lined up a couple nights of haunty goodness for later this month. Yep. So I'm gonna hit Millburns on Sunday, and then the following Saturday hit Scaregrounds PDX, which apparently has Grimthorn Manor, a Fright Town haunt.
Really?
Oh, interesting. Yep. Do you know?
It's even branded that way. It says Grimthorn Manor, a Fright Town haunt.
Interesting.
Interesting.
How much do you know about what that setup is like? Are they like, is it like a franchisee kind of a thing, or is Dave involved?
Dave sold everything.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
So he's not just like renting out the concept. Okay. Interesting.
I don't know what his involvement is. I haven't had a chance to talk to him recently, so I know that I know because of Tom and Ed, our guests from last week, that Dave was brokering a deal.
Okay.
So I think he was involved somehow. I know that one of the people that helped reassemble Grimthorn Manor is James Sheringhausen, who did a lot of the robotics and carpentry, and also worked on. He's a stage actor, so he also taught a lot of the actors how to perform.
That's right. I remember that.
Yep.
Yeah.
when we were at Hour of Midnight, the Assassins game, the voice that introduces that's James Sheringhausen.
I knew I recognized that voice.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, I remember because I was doing many years ago. I was doing a scene, and he was like, running the acting 101, and he did a quick walkthrough, like lights on walkthrough the haunt to see how his performance was, and I didn't do what he suggested because I had a different feeling for the room I was in. So I did what I did, and he was like, yeah, forget whatever I said. That's fine. That's horrifying. What's wrong with you? He's like, what's wrong with you? I was like, I've been doing it for a while. He's like, yeah, I can tell. You're broken. You're great.
Yep.
Yeah. So before we jump into stuff, we've got a really cool interview tonight with filmmaker Matt Smith, who shot one of our favorite shorts at the Lovecraft Film Festival this year, the Altruist.
Yeah.
We'll be talking to him in probably about 20 minutes. Give or take.
That was definitely not just our favorite, but the most talked about short of the fest.
It's true. And the one that literally had a physical impact on an attendee.
I shouldn't laugh at that. That's that poor individual was not well.
Yeah, I feel bad for him, but as listener Kevin had posted on his Instagram, he's like, been coming to Lovecraft for almost 15 years. First time I ever saw an ambulance called.
Yep.
I wonder if Matt Smith was aware of that.
No,
because I'm pretty sure he had a Q&A right after, but we had to miss it. So
maybe we'll ask him that.
Well, I would like to ask him and see if he knew one. Before
we do that, we just watched a couple of horror trailers.
Yeah.
We watched a trailer for the new Scream, technically Scream 5, and for Halloween Kills. Both of which I'm super excited for. I'm probably more jazzed for Halloween Kills, but that Scream trailer really piqued my interest.
I'm certainly intrigued by it.
Yeah.
It's like I enjoyed Scream when it first came out, and I know I think I've watched all of them. There's been 4, right?
There's been 4 plus the show. I think it was on MTV.
The show I never watched, but
I don't think I ever.
The show was interesting. Yeah.
I know
I didn't know there was a show.
I know, like, I remember things like when watching Scream 2, I kept thinking, this guy, the villain for this, the guy who's playing Ghostface, he's going to go somewhere. He's going to be somebody. Like, this guy has real screen presence. That was Timothy Oliphant.
Oh shit! It's just funny because Scream 2 is the one I remember the least. It's my least favorite. But oh fuck, you're right.
Yeah, that was nice. He was the one that I remembered from that movie. Like,
wait. He's Ghostface in which one?
Scream 2.
Scream 2.
I remember that I saw the first 3 because they all came out like pretty regularly, and I was of like that age. It was, like a teen horror film franchise. So I remember watching all those. I didn't know about the show, and I don't know when the 4th one came out, but I had no idea. So yeah, I have some homework to do.
I don't remember 3 or 4. So I think I'm in that same boat.
3 was interesting at first because it played off the whole, like, on the 3rd part, all bets are off. And it was Wes Craven. And in number 3 in Nightmare, he killed Heather in Nightmare 3, which was a huge fucking shock to everyone. Because Heather survived. She was the final girl, and she doesn't survive Dream Warriors. Spoilers. So I really thought Sydney was going to die in part 3. And, she didn't, obviously, because she's in fucking part 5. But 3 was interesting. 3 also had some odd comedy beats that, like, Jay and Silent Bob, I believe, are in Scream 3.
What?
Yes, they are.
They are. Not Kevin Smith and Jason Mewes. Jay and Silent Bob, which is why in Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back, there's that entire scene where they're doing another Scream movie.
Carrie Fisher is also in Scream 3.
She is, yeah.
Yeah.
But I remember enjoying Scream 3. I actually, and I think about it, I haven't seen Scream 4. But this one has me interested because it feels like it's acting like that soft reboot that horror movies do, but then they tantalize old school fans by bringing in OG cast members. So I feel like they're playing with that trope.
I don't know how long it's been since the last Scream-related thing came out. Like I said, I didn't see 4 or that show, but I recently watched Scream here at home because Christian had never seen it. Am I good? If memory serves, it's pretty good. We should watch it, and it holds up. It's definitely pretty 90s, except for you notice that all of the actresses, their characters have like a different aesthetic vibe. And so I think there's like a little bit this is part of their commentary, right? And so like one of the friends has a very like 60s or 70s era look about her, right. But for the most part it feels like a 90s film, and I remember thinking like that would be like really hard or weird to pull off now because a lot of people don't even keep a landline anymore. So I'll be interested to see how they move that element forward.
I don't believe I've seen number 4.
I haven't either.
Just based on the cast list.
And
it's like quite the who's who.
Yeah.
And I'd forgotten that Timothy Oliphant had been involved.
And to your point about the landline and them playing with technology in that new Scream trailer, I like the idea of like, oh, we have perfect digital homes now. And, Ghostface is like, unlock. She's like, lock, unlock. No. And it's much like every good slasher, horror will always find a way to circumvent that which makes you safe. Good horror will.
Yep.
You're never safe. That's the whole point.
I do feel like that there's not just Halloween Kills and with the Scream, there's just kind of revisiting old places again and trying to do something new, which is always hard to do with horror.
Yeah.
Over my weekend, I watched 2 horror movie remakes from 2009 that were
What were they?
Friday the 13th.
Oh.
And My Bloody Valentine.
I don't remember hating My Bloody Valentine.
And they're both passable, but they're not.
Okay.
I mean, they're just not scary.
Yeah.
And the thing that I find most interesting about both of those is they both came out in 2009. And Friday the 13th stars Jared Padalecki. My Bloody Valentine stars Jensen Ackles.
Right.
So it was about 5 years into Supernatural when they both went, hey, we should go do a movie.
Right. But you're right on both of them. They're fine. And if I feel like if you're going to reboot, if you're going to do like a remake or a reboot of Friday the 13th
or any horror movie,
you have to really, like, I saw the reboot, the fucking Michael Bay produced Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and its most egregious foul,
oh man,
is that it's boring.
It is. It was really boring.
There's a lot of, it's like, well, this shouldn't shock me because it's Michael Bay produced, but it's like everyone thought the reason why they liked it is there were a lot of like booty shots. I'm like, that's just how Tobe Hooper filmed it because no one had done that kind of shot before. And also, there's only one shot from that girl's butt as she walks up to the house in the original one. And then that's it. But like fucking the remake, every time a woman's on screen, like that camera starts at her ass and then pans up. I'm like, come on.
That's cheap.
Oh, yeah.
It's cheap. And it was boring. It was just flat out boring.
He was the producer of the Friday the 13th one, and it was T&A all the way through.
Yeah. Which in the defense of the Friday the 13th movies, that has always been kind of a weird stalwart of that franchise is gratuitous nudity. If you were gonna play into the tongue-in-cheek aspect, like Friday the 13th movies are incredibly violent. They're almost Looney Tunes in their violence. Like, how can Jason kill somebody next?
Oh
there
my
was
God.
There was a lot of Looney Tunes violence in this.
You just reminded me, Christian was watching a quote unquote horror film just yesterday. I want to say it was called Hell Baby. And the idea is that
awesome name.
Yeah, the idea is that this couple moves into this like decrepit house in New Orleans, and they're like starting to fix it up because they're gonna live in it. The wife is pregnant, and then she starts acting weird, and like ultimately like it's because she's possessed or her babies are possessed. She's having twins, and like weird stuff is happening all the time. But it was actually a comedy. So like Rob Corddry is the lead. And it's all comedic actors. Not Jordan Peele. Keegan-Michael Key is another like heavily portrayed character. And so it wasn't like to the level of like the Scary Movie franchise type of like parody of it, but it was like lots of gags. And one of them was naked woman. And she's not just topless, she's fully naked. You see everything, and then she just starts having a conversation with Rob Corddry's character, and it's like a 10-minute scene, and she's just completely naked the whole time and like oiling herself up and doing a bunch of shimmying.
Like, you have to bend over to pick this up. Oh,
I mean, that's like the one thing that didn't happen.
And this is gonna make me sound like an old snooty fuddy-duddy film freak, which Cable will be like, I'm shocked. Those remakes also, the worst thing that happened to horror cinema was the thought that CGI blood would be easier and cheaper than in-house gore effects. And both of those remakes used the shit out of CGI blood.
Yeah,
and
they do.
You could just tell this doesn't fucking work at all.
I think with My Bloody Valentine, part of why they did that also dealt with the fact that it was a 3D movie. So it also came out during the the era of let's revisit 3D.
Right.
So all of the digital splatter effects on the camera have to be, or all the splatter effects have to be digital because you don't want to clean off the camera.
Yeah.
And
I guess
it works better in 3D.
I will say there is one pseudo remake that I actually found really fun, and it did not get enough credit. It was the 2019 remake Black Christmas, which is actually a remake of the 2006, which is a remake of the original one from like 1974, I think.
That's a lot. That's some Inception level.
Is that the one with the college girls?
Yes.
Yeah. So the original, it's the same story. Like a murderer who has an issue with Christmas only kills on Christmas, basically. The first one is, again, sexploitation horror. The remake in the early 2000s, same thing, but with more low-key nudity and CGI horror. The 2019 one sets it up almost exactly. And about a third of the way in, you realize when all the sorority girls are like, this has fucking happened before. And we're not going to fucking die this time. And it becomes this weird reverse Home Alone where they begin to torment the guy in their house, trying to kill them. And I was like, oh shit, how come no one's talking about this movie? It's ridiculous, but it's kind of great. Yeah.
Probably for
but
the
you're
same
right,
reasons.
it's the sorority house one.
I only just watched it like within the last year. I can't remember exactly when, but it has not been that long. I don't remember people talking about it in 2019. And I also am not remembering them having a time in the movie where they're like, oh, this has happened before, but this time we're gonna.
I mean, probably not. No, I'm probably remembering that incorrectly. I just remember it took the trope of the stupid sorority girls that are just there to be tits and meat to be killed. And it was like, well, no, it's not going to happen.
It's fascinating. The 2006 remake had Michelle Trachtenberg and Mary Elizabeth Winstead.
Yeah.
And the 2019 had Imogen Poots, who I remember from 28 Weeks Later. The other girls don't look immediately familiar, but I'll bet there are other horror movies in their background. Huh. And there's apparently there's a 2021. Oh.
Is there another one coming? No, that was last year. No, this year. Huh.
That's this year. There's one scheduled for 2021. I don't know what this is. It's apparently a twist where it's fraternity rather than a sorority.
Interesting. I wonder if it's going to be like the same timeline or a different, like at a later date. Because one of the big things in the 2019 version is the assault situation. Or like boys being creeps. I don't remember exactly to what level they took it, but part of the backstory is, like girls aren't safe in the college co-ed environments. And I know a lot of some of the character fears came from that element. And then, sort of a taking it back.
We may have to revisit this one in February.
One?
Because I think there are a couple of reasons why we haven't heard more about this. One, Aaron, if it's got the theme that you're talking about, then it probably didn't get talked about the same way that Terminator Dark Fate didn't get talked about. Two,
because a girl directed it.
Also, because it's written and directed by a woman. So that, all right.
Actually, that could be a cool double feature for February. Terminator is not horror, but I mean, it is in a way.
Yep. I still haven't seen that one myself. And now I'm at the point where it's like, I just want to make a Terminator month where, watch one and then another and another and another. Maybe skip one. I know we didn't watch it just now, but there is another trailer that I think that we've all seen is, and it also kind of falls into this realm of remake, is Resident Evil Welcome to Raccoon City.
Yes.
And longtime listeners know of Aaron's unabashed love for the entire Resident Evil series.
I love that without a shred of fucking irony.
Yes.
Except the second one, which is absolutely awful. And that's saying a lot.
It's garbage.
It's so bad.
But I think what fascinates me most about Welcome to Raccoon City is that it looks to be, from the trailers, an adaptation of the video games directly and not a reboot of the movie franchise. Because it's very much the plot of Resident Evil 1 and Resident Evil 2, the video games.
Yeah, it looks like a mesh up. Yeah, you're right.
Because it has all the characters. It has the Redfields, both Chris and Claire. It has Leon Kennedy. It has Jill Valentine.
Jill Valentine.
Both of whom are not white people.
I'm good with that.
Yeah, it's great. It's got Wesker. It's got Dr. Birkin. It's
the daughter, all that. Yeah,
it's the actual fall of Raccoon City. All of the monsters look like the monsters from the video game. It's like, oh, okay, I'm on board.
Yeah, no, it's good. That's November, right?
Yes, November in theaters.
So I will definitely be in the theater for that one, without question. And it's funny, even the trailer, you realize that they said it in the late 90s. They said it in 1998, which is when the game takes place. Even knowing that, I was not ready for the Four Non-Blondes kind of pseudo trailer music remix. I just was not ready for it. Like for the first 10 seconds, I was like, really? Even knowing the era, I was like, really? Fucking come on. I mean, but then 5 minutes after that, I was like,
yeah, because it works. It's funny. The rest of the movie doesn't look funny. It looks terrifying.
It does.
And it has an Amel.
Which one?
Robbie Amell is playing Chris Redfield.
Interesting.
They're definitely taking the angle of playing up Claire Redfield's chasing conspiracy theories,
which I like.
Yep, and going
which is part of her background from Resident Evil Code Veronica. Because no one believes her.
Nobody.
Looks like we're about to have our guest join us.
Awesome.
Hello.
Is it all working?
It's good. Sorry for any link confusion there.
No worries.
My cut and paste skills are slowly deteriorating over time.
So everyone, as we talk about opening the show, we are now joined by local filmmaker Matt Smith, with whom we saw one of his shorts debuted 2 weekends ago now at the HP Lovecraft Film Festival, The Altruist, and left one hell of an impact on all of us. So we were like, we have to talk to this person. So Matt, welcome.
Thank you very much. Glad to be here.
Yeah, it's great to have you. So so you're a local filmmaker?
Yeah, I grew up in Portland. Left for college, came back. So been here now for 15 years or so.
Nice.
Oh, nice. Cool.
19 years. Okay. The reason I'm stopping on that is because you did provide us with links to 2 of your films, and just doing some quick mental math, I believe that other film is about 20 years old now.
Yeah, that was done around, that was like 2000. I think we shot it 2000, sort of came out 2002, 2003.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah. So then that just made me wonder if you made it here or you made it when you were away at school.
No, we shot it. I'd graduated by that point. We were, I was living in LA. We came up here to shoot. We actually shot that one. That was the provider was shot up in on Lopez Island up in the San Juans.
Okay.
So go away, come back. Usually come back here to shoot. Like the provider, the Altruist, for instance, was shot in my mom's basement. So, you do what you can with what you have.
It's a good space for it.
Yeah. It's very, very spooky.
Okay, well, why don't we start by you giving the audience a quick outline of what the Altruist is?
In what sense? Narratively? I mean, or just sort of like what I think it is about, or?
Yes.
Well, we don't
If you wanted to like start with like the elevator pitch, or like like a brief outline of like what the trailer would be for this
Okay,
film.
so yeah, sure. It's I would say it's it's an exploration of a space. We follow a man around in a space and wonder what the hell he's doing. We see lots of elements of body horror in terms of like, lots of fecal material spewing all over the place, and lots of caregiving going on. And we're still sort of left, asking a lot of questions about what is going on, which is essentially how the film was conceived. It was a series of sort of orthogonal movements trying to guide the audience through a piece of space and sort of narrative that isn't exactly predictable. And trying to move them into a comfort zone and then make them uncomfortable, move them into a comfort zone and make them uncomfortable. And ultimately, this character that we're following around, who is associating with another character who is we're led to believe is some sort of an invalid, and that he is the caretaker for this invalid. It comes to a point in which their relationship fundamentally alters, and he is then forced to make a choice in terms of like what he is willing to do in order to perpetuate what he is supposed to do. Without giving away too much, I don't know if anybody's going to watch this or not, but I mean, without giving away too much, that's essentially what the film is about.
We have very much been talking about the short since, both on the show and in discussions with other people. So we have been encouraging people to go seek it out and watch it. Like we were telling all of our listeners to definitely tune into the Fest at Home, streaming version.
Right, and they have another. It's through tonight, I believe. So like you can still get the. I think tonight is the last night of the streaming part of Lovecraft.
Good to know.
It is, yeah.
Yeah, I didn't realize it went for so long.
But we have been going, oh yes, please watch this so that we can all continue to talk about it. I think it is. I would argue that it is easily the most talked about short of the entire festival.
Oh, really? That's great.
Because we spent the rest of the weekend talking about it. So it's like we commented on the fact it's like that was interesting. It was an interesting schedule choice because that was the movie right before we went for dinner break on Saturday.
That's right.
Which I'm sure the organizers did on purpose. They had to.
Oh, absolutely.
As far as I remember, everybody went to sushi. So I think it's interesting, and in juxtaposition with like what they're eating. So
we had Korean fried chicken, so it was equally
sweet.
Juicy and crunchy and covered in sauces. So
Excellent.
Yep. But I think one of the things for me that it was amazing that the title alone helped build the horror, like just being called the Altruist, and knowing what altruism means, and then having it associated with the acts that are going on screen. It's like, oh, okay. Like I thought I was a good person. This is different.
Right.
Yeah. It definitely leaves you with the sense that you're really only getting like a tiny piece of an overall story. And then when you link that into to also watching The Provider, your earlier film, then you get this like really big, like same universe vibe. Like those two stories felt maybe not directly connected, but that they're happening in the same space-time element, where things are just the same kind of not right.
Right, and I think that's part of like the way that I think that I go about when I'm conceiving of projects like that. This universe is definitely the pool into which I'm dipping back again and again in terms of like the scripts that are right and the ideas that interest me. And I mean, trust me, I love all types of movies and narratives. It's you know, I grew up on them and I consume them like crazy. It's just that I tend not to be the one that focuses on like, you know, the love story. It's just not it's just not my go-to. For these, I think it's always interesting to me is to, like, you know, I don't know what the is this an expletive?
You can say whatever you
Oh,
want
yeah.
on
Yeah,
this.
We work-
I don't. I mean, I tend to like to fuck up a little bit with fuck up the universe just a little bit to make sure that the audience is offbeat, because my most memorable theater experience or cinema experiences are always those ones in which I'm like, what
What the hell did they just do?
yeah, exactly. It's like, you know, and when you find those moments, those little bright moments, they tend to sit with you, and they tend to, and then they tend to expand, and they lead to other places. And those are the things that I really I appreciate about especially about genre cinema, about stuff that most people aren't going to do. So in this universe, you're right. I mean, the universe of the provider and the universe of the altruist are a lot like, I think I talked about it at the festival, which is like, okay, let's dial back time and set it forward again, see what we get. See how close we get. I mean, we might get really close. It might look like us, but that space where they're inhabiting, I always envisioned it as a space that is an ecosystem in and of itself. So, and these are simply two species that are interacting in that space, and we don't see the multitude that come in and out of that space and doing whatever they need to do to maintain that building, that space, the city, the whole ecosystem where these creatures live and reproduce and die. And that's, you know, that's kind of, like I said, that's the pool to which I keep going back.
What draws you to, and tell me if I'm completely off base on this, what draws you to creating these films that on one end are absolute acts of like selfless love being confronted with like just utter horror and depravity of what can happen to humans? Like, there was a moment in The Provider and both in The Altruist where I myself personally, you know, had memories of being around and caring for a loved one who was dying of dementia and Alzheimer's, and you absolutely adore this person, but what their own body has done to them is absolutely grotesque and completely unfair. If there were any form of caring higher power out there, should not allow that. But you still try to find the beauty and dignity within what little they have left. Is that something that calls to you, or what? Why would you like to?
It's certainly been my experience. So like when especially with The Altruist, my dad died in 2016, and his final years were not what I would say was the best quality of life. And so the care and the care for a parent, especially, I think, you know, somebody who's very close to you and who has cared for you in much the same way, ends up being a very potent force. But the degradation of the body, you know, we talk about body horror, but the degradation of the body is an inevitable kind of process. And I do find, I mean, there's something I'm working on right now, which is essentially that same, along the same lines, in terms of like, we're born into this space, and we're damn lucky that we can walk around and we can think and we can do whatever we want, because it is a second between me being able to communicate with you and me having, you know, my kids tend to me, you know, a vessel bursts, or, you know, the whatever happens, you know, I walk across the street the wrong way. So the tenuousness of the integrity of the body, I think, is something that draws me to also the antithesis of that, which is how we get used to how that body degrades. You know, we care for the people that we love, and what we would normally consider like indignities beyond, you know, the things that we would never have thought that we would do, we will do. You know, right. I will hold the container for my dad's penis. You know, I will wipe, you know, his butt. I will carry a body that's 90 pounds. You know, it's like you do it, and you're like, it's things that you never thought. But it's also, I mean, it reinforces my sense of like what we have, and you know, and the preciousness of like waking up and seeing my kids and giving them Cheerios, you know.
Right.
That knowing that that's part of your background, that came across in your performance in the Altruist. 100%.
Thank you. I mean, you know, that's, you know, like right upstairs. You
Yeah.
know? It's like, can't get away from it.
Mhm.
I have a fairly strong aversion to not body horror, but definitely if something comes out of your body, I don't want anything to do with that. I can't. I have to leave the room if my cat is about to hairball. It's just and watching the Altruists especially was, I'd never been so repelled and simultaneously compelled at the same time in that way. And I think that that sort of speaks to like the truthful like, humanity aspect of this story that you're telling is the things that you can't deal with or never imagine yourself having to or being willing to. That's just what we do for each other.
It is. One other aspect I want to make attention to for anybody who is contemplating looking at this. I also think there's a lot of it that's funny. So it's like it's not
Yeah.
just you know all of like, oh my god, you know, degradation and horror and body, you know, the bad body associations. There are parts of it that I very tongue in cheek and that I still go back and I'm like, what were you thinking? You know, it's like, oh my god. But that's also part of an entertainment, because regardless of whether, you know, I consider this art or, you know, just, you know, fluff or whatever it is, it's supposed to be entertaining, and it's supposed to have some elements that are, you know, grip people, throw them off balance, and ultimately, you know, leave them hopefully somewhat amused, you know, just engaged.
Well,
It definitely
and
does.
go ahead.
No, you.
I want to say, even though she has very little movement in the film as a whole, like the other performer, Elizabeth Jackson, like really, she's busting her butt in that film, like to pull off a whole string of emotions, especially for the most part, she says one word.
Not
the
just
whole
for the most
time.
part, in fact, entirely.
Yeah, yeah. She
She
runs the gamut of emotions in that film.
Yeah,
and you're right. Some of them are quite actually humorous in a dark way.
Yeah, she was amazing. You know, she's also my partner. But she was, so I mean, you can take it with a grain of salt if you want. But I find the stuff that she did in the film really quite astonishing. And a lot of it was sort of found in the sense of like we would go through a scene, and there would be times in which, you know, she's going Daniel, and it's like we would just keep going and keep going and keep going until, you know, you reach an emotional breaking point in which you stop, can't do it. But yeah, she brought a great deal of integrity and a great deal of, I mean, just, you know, potent emotional you know, acumen to it, and it was an extraordinary experience to work with her. She's also, I mean, you know, we would go back again and again and again in terms of the variation you're talking about. I mean, we would go over it again and again and again and again, you know, in ADR as well as just in the primary shoot, in which you gotta understand she's wrapped into that thing.
Yeah, I'm sure we'll get to that later, but yeah, that's
Kind of a prop.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's good. Yeah.
And everything in the Altruist is practical effects, correct?
Correct. Yeah.
Really impressive. But going back to your Elizabeth's performance, I just want to let you finish.
Oh yeah, no, I was just going to say that she put just an immense amount of work into that one word, because it ran the gamut, and because you have to, by limiting it to that one word, is that then you have to then have an entirely formed performance from it. You can't simply, can't just repeat it. There has to be an arc and a story arc for this character that is embodied by or is vocalized.
Well, and even physically, she has limited range of motion of what she's allowed to do. It's her face and her hands. The other part of her, up until a certain point, but in those scenes where she's calling out Daniel, 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 it just kind of moves on its own, which is very otherworldly and upsetting. And that really drives home the whole concept of like, this is not normal. And it wasn't normal when you first walk in and you see all this, but that it's only that upper body and her face that is allowed to emote. She can't use the rest of her body to convey any kind of emotion. Is really impressive.
Yeah, no, and again, she brought she brought something on the page to a level that I was not expecting. I didn't know her when I wrote it, and when we shot it, I was like, that it's far more than I ever imagined. For anybody out there, hire her because she is an astonishing actor.
Yes, for sure.
Yes. Well, coming back to effects, I said it seemed like there was one part where I was like, "There's no way this is practical because it's so elaborate." But then your credits indicate that there are puppeteers. You had 4 puppeteers for your main effect.
Yeah, I mean, so for the main effect, that was there were the two. There were we found Josh and Brandon were these 2 effects guys that worked for my producer on another project, and they just wanted to do it for experience. They just were like, "Great, we just want to give you the money and give us some materials and we'll do it." Lance Woolen, who is a local puppeteer in Portland, used to work for Leica, and I think he's off. He's on his own now, but he's an astonishing puppeteer. Really, just like great. He came up with all the armature and the ways to move the thing in a way that was realistic. And then we had Aaron, who was also who was the close puppeteer for the close-ups of the creature. So we had sort of like a 3-part step for that. And they also worked for the arm as well. But they put in a huge amount of work. I mean, for the money that we had for an effects budget. Again, if you want practical effects, go to these guys because they are an amazing artist.
Good to know.
Yeah, that this works well as a business card for them as well as you.
For sure, yeah.
I think one of the things that we talked about at the fest was that there seem to be 2 kinds of approaches in body horror or in horror in general. You either do things in heavy shadow and you just get glimpses of things and you never get to look at it head on, but through sound and through intimation, you just get a little grossed out. And then there's the horror that goes, oh no, we have enough faith in our practical effects that we're just going to shine a light directly on this. And that was the route you took.
Well, yeah. I mean,
there's no pulling the camera away on this one.
No, and I mean, and that's part of I think the fun of it, is like when you're like, is that CG? Or is like, it's like, it's like those are again those moments that you're like, wait, what? And you're and then you realize that, oh no, it's they're just doing it. I find, again, I love CG. Again, it's like I don't issue it at all. I think it's
a tool.
It is a fantastic tool. It can be overused, and it can be also used, precisely. And I think the more precise you use any tool, the better the product is going to be. With the practical effects, I like puppets, and they if they can work well, if you can shoot it in a way that really accentuates the puppet and allows the puppet to be expressive, then it's amazing. Because there is really no substitute, I think, for like on-set acting. And essentially what we did is that we wrote out for that part where I just wrote out an entire creature inner monologue, and I was like, this is what we're trying to convey over the course of this interaction with these characters. And Erin took that and studied it and came up with how she was going to move and manipulate and make that piece of silicone emote. And it was, again, it was also sort of like, whoa, didn't expect it. And it came across beautifully.
It really did. That element is like a character of its own.
Yeah, and as close as that CG artists are, they're amazing, and they can do a whole lot of stuff. But it's like sometimes it's like the uncanny valley. There are times in which you buy it because you're willing to buy it, and then there are times in which it really works. And I think the times that the CG guys get it right is like those times that you forget. And I love it, but with the practical effects, you can get, like, I look at the arm scene, for instance, and I'm like, okay. I wish the seam could have been eliminated with some digital effects, but you do what you can when you have a $30,000 budget.
But that scene though plays very well, and huge props to like the sound design.
Yeah,
on the hand scene. I mean, the visual effects were great, and your performance was great. But it's that sound, man, that really just sends it home.
Yeah, that was Corey Crawford, another local Portland sound designer.
And then also, I don't know if you're aware of this, but that scene, I do believe, elicited the first ever ambulance response to the Lovecraft Film Festival.
What? No way, what?
Oh, so no one told you this?
No. Oh.
So, and we'll get back to it, not to derail too much. So the three of us kind of sit in the back a little bit to just kind of take in the films and whatnot. And there was someone who had stood up and was kind of standing by the door eating their popcorn. And I think it's because they needed to stand or whatever. But during that scene, we kind of heard them make like a cough, and they turned to leave the theater like something was wrong. Very quickly, and they collapsed and opened to the back, the left side doors of the theater, and had to be pulled out and given air. And the organizers called an ambulance, and the paramedics were like, "Are you okay?" And I overheard a little bit. He's like, I didn't realize I was getting lightheaded, and I just wasn't ready for this."
Whoa.
And he felt really bad. He felt so bad, but a couple of our friends were, yeah.
He stood up mid arm scene and made his way towards the back door.
And I think he went down as he was going through the door, such that the door was like being held open.
Yep.
Oh my God.
Gwen happened
Not to make you feel bad. It was they took care of it, and he was fine. He was fine within like 20 minutes, but they still, for safety's sake, hired paramedics to check on him. And
yeah, Gwen happened to be standing right next to that exit, so she was right there and was the one that helped him out to the lobby, and another volunteer got right there with her. So,
but there were more than a few Instagram and Twitter posts of people saying like, "Well, it finally happened. The Lovecraft Film Festival had to call an ambulance. This filmmaker needs to be very proud of himself."
Oh my God, I had no idea.
Yeah.
Well,
I hope whoever that is, if you are watching, I'm sorry, but kind of like maybe worthwhile. I don't know.
Yeah.
I think that's truly a testament of how much this movie can affect you. Like, even if you're told it's like, it had this effect, that's still not going to prepare. No one in that theater was prepared for that. Like, you could feel it in the rest of the audience. There was almost like a collective feeling of like, we're that guy that just fainted, but we're all right there with it.
The overall word that I had, like directly after watching the film, was like, it is relentless. Things just keep going long after, like, okay, I understand what this is. I get where we're going. Let's move on to the next thing. And nope, we're still here. We're still watching it happen, even though the point has been made, but you didn't shoot it to make a point and then move on. You shot it to give a feeling, to convey, just like a certain sense of things, not just hit the highlights and like an outline, even though it is a short film.
It is a short film, and this one is a long film. It has, there've been a lot of festivals that have been like, we love it, we just can't program it. And I understand the limitations of a 35-minute film, because you're saying essentially, well, we're going to privilege this over 4 or even 5 or 6 shorter films. And I understand that, but yeah, to your point though, I don't. It's not like it's not like a tight tent, in terms of like a comedy set. It could be. I mean, you could do that. You could do that with almost any narrative. You can go boom, 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 boom. Sure, because humans get the point. But I also think sometimes part of life is just inhabiting the space and setting there, and listening and trying to get a sense of sort of like the greater sense of like what is around you. And we have shorthand in cinema all the time, which is fantastic. We can get from this universe to another universe to another universe, in a cinematic language that we have developed over the last 100 years. But sometimes I think just inhabiting a space can be as dark and as rich and as fulfilling in terms of an entertainment than simply stepping from stone to stone to stone across the stream. Sometimes it's good to just get wet.
It's definitely like part of what I appreciate about the movie, even though it makes me very uncomfortable.
Yeah, I mean, again, like I said, I'm working on something now that I'm trying to figure out where the limits of that are. So like, 7 minutes of a makeup scene, it's a long one. I understand that. But when we get into like the sort of like the more clinical sort of body horror stuff, like if you're in a process, and sometimes I call these like process ones, like if you're in a situation in which you're examining a process of deconstructing a body, so like how particular can you make it? How long can you extend it? And I think the way that if there was something that I fault myself on in terms of this film was it was shot in such a way that it was very hard to give myself the space to condense it. I wanted it this length. At the same time, I didn't have the choice to cut it because of the way we shot it. So I couldn't. There's like you either have like makeup and then your full makeup, for instance, and you cut that 7 minutes, or you have to extend it out. And what I'm working on now is again a deconstruction of a body. How particular can we make it, and how long can that go on? How gruesome can it be before people are like, okay, we really can't do this anymore? How many people are really falling out the door?
But what's also a great like juxtaposition is that when you kind of have that final reveal towards the end of the full body of his partner, it becomes oddly comical. Yeah, in a dark way, in that anyone, I don't want to get too much away, but anyone who has tried to give medicine to their pet is gonna in the face of this horror is gonna go, no, just take your medicine, just take it, damn it. Like they're gonna identify like that with it.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, and again, that was essentially that. If you go back and you read the creature's inner monologue at that point, that's pretty much what it's all about. It's like from the pet's point of view, it's like, oh, what the fuck is this? But no, what? Oh, that's nasty. Get that, get it.
Yeah.
And it is.
Come on.
And you can see, like, I had people when we were first cutting through, when we had an initial cut, I had a friend of mine who was like, you got to get a different cut of you because you're almost smiling. And it's like, it's true, because it's like there are some takes in which I'm like, what?
But I don't know if I agree with that person. I think that smile is so universal in no matter how much horror a person has endured, there's still a part of it that's going to kind of hit that part of your brain that goes, like, everything's horrible and gross and grotesque, but this is kind of
And that was my point to Charlie. It was like, that's the point where what else has he got? At that point.
Yeah.
It's like, I this is where I am, man. I'm just gonna try to get through this.
Yeah.
It definitely sells that. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Cable.
I was just going to say that also sells the feeling that this is not new. This has been going on for a while, and there is the level of familiarity with this particular condition. And
Yeah, I imagine
it-
I imagine that it took years potentially to get to the state that we're seeing right now.
right.
Yeah, exactly. And there's like, myriad out there of these creatures, perhaps, or like, again, there's like, what I was trying to get to also is like, there is also a sense of finality in the sense that are we at the end of these respective species? Are they part of a relationship that has no future? Is this reproductive imperative at its conclusion, and are we the end of a species? I don't, there's something about that space that's very depressing. Well, to me personally, because it's where I grew up, but also just in terms of like the closeness of it and the decrepitude of it, these people living out their lives there. That I always imagine, I wish we had the budget to add the elements that I wanted, which were like the hints of the life that had been lived there, whether it's carcasses of other creatures before it, whether it's remnants of his species, whether it's remnants of other species, but there's the life outside of it. Would have been interesting to be able to do, but I think I lost my thread here, but the point being that that there is in this space a sense of finality, which is part of what we were going for.
Well, what you say there actually brings up a question from our listeners in the chat. Our friend Norman in Texas says he has a question for you. I have heard a movie is made 3 times, once with a script, once on set, and once in the editor's room. What was something from all 3 phases of the movie that you wish you'd made it into the final product, or if there were?
Well, I wish in the script. That's an interesting one. Yeah, you make it. Okay, I'll take that as a premise. So make it 3 times. The script that came out pretty easily, and it didn't change a whole lot. So I mean, in terms of making that movie as it's written on the screen, you can read that and you'll see it pretty much. It streams out pretty much as it's written on the page. The differences are that I had more dialogue that was terrible, and so I cut that. I was like, you look really stupid and you're terrible, so goodbye. Then we cut it down from me being a more talkative at the beginning and at the end to simply trying to concentrate it onto the relationship immediately in next to both characters. On set, that is, I think, where, I mean, editing happens and there's lots of editing tricks and things that do change things. But on the set is where we found most of, I think, what is interesting about this film, is that because the set gives you that immediacy of the moment to say, oh, right, that is what I want, or, oh, that's, what was I thinking, but those moments happen, day by day, hour by hour, where when the whole Daniel thing with Liz is in the script, but it wasn't until on set and Liz was going through it and prepping it, and that I was like, oh, right, that's exactly what we need. We have been talking about camera moves and this and that, and then watching Liz and working with Liz on set in that moment was the way of saying that's the thing. In the editing, I think it's true. I mean, yeah, you do get a third film, and in this particular case, just because of the constraints of the budget and the constraints of like what we had, and there wasn't a whole lot in terms of what we could do. We were pretty tight up to the footage we had. I don't know if that really answers Norman's question, but I mean,
no, I think it does actually completely. That's definitely, I think, yeah, for sure. Another quick question from listeners. So we had listeners that couldn't make it to Lovecraft for various reasons or couldn't book the streaming weekend. Is there or will there be a place they could watch The Altruist online? Whether it,
I am I'm hopeful. I mean, there've been a couple of different distribution platforms that have wanted it. Deals fall through, and that happens right now. I'm hoping that Bloody Disgusting is gonna take it. There was something
Nice.
going on with I think they either were bought or they either bought or were bought by Screambox. So there's a mashup going on between there, and so the contracts are having to be retooled. But eventually it's going to be, it'll be online. Right now, because it's still going through the festival circuit, and it's playing in Australia in a couple of weeks, and they're streaming it, so people want to geo block it off.
Yeah, for folks who don't know, if you're kind of playing the festival circuit, you can't just throw it up on YouTube or Vimeo for just anyone to watch. It breaks a lot of rules.
Yeah, and it interferes
with
their audience too. They want to make sure that their audience is on their platform, which makes sense and makes it's good business.
Maybe an alternative question would be, how can people keep up with your activities, your productions, and ideally get a chance to hear about news regarding when your films are available?
There's my website, which is Matt Reed Smith, REID Smith, mattreedsmith.com. That'll have anything new that's up and coming. There's also the Altruist short film, which is the Instagram handle. Also the Facebook page is the Altruist short film. So both of those are pretty much, since this is the first one that I've done in a while, those are pretty much the conduits to any future content that's going to be coming up.
And also, if I can add, I just did a casual IMDb search. You're kind of racking in the rewards with this, so well done, sir.
Oh, thank you very much. Yeah, no.
British horror films, Best in Boston Science Film Festival, Genre Blast, Grimfest.
Yeah, it's been for the limited number of festivals that were able to run a 35-minute film. I've been very gratified by the success it's had.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Congrats.
Yeah, hopefully one day we see it, like you said, pop up on a Bloody Disgusting collection, or maybe show up on Shudder, one of my favorite services up there. They do a shorts collections. That'd be cool.
Yeah, we've been trying to figure out how to get to those guys, but no joy so far, but we'll get there.
One last question from the audience. This is apropos, because before you joined us, we were talking about some recent and not so recent films that we've enjoyed within the horror genre. And again, Norm from Texas would like to know, what are your favorite horror films from the past 10 years?
Ooh, that's interesting.
And you can just pick one or two. You don't have to be like, I have 20. If you have 20, we're going to bring you back on next week. But
well, interesting. So just I have kids, so it's hard for me to sit down and watch horror films. But I did make it through The Lighthouse, and I got to say that was I enjoyed that immensely. And anybody who hasn't seen it, go out and see it. Whether or not it's simply because of the way they shot it, or because of the performances, or just the sensibility of it, it's a gorgeous.
The performances are just out of this world.
It's just crazy.
It's madness. It's wonderful.
I don't know. I mean, Willem Dafoe can rarely do anything bad, but both of them were an astonishing pair together. And the amount of stuff, just the amount of how they associated with each other, and the amount of stuff that they had to do and go through to get to that point is pretty remarkable. Film is gorgeous, though.
Yeah, for sure.
That's a good one.
Well, Matt, it was it's really great having you on. We got to get close to wrapping up the show here.
Absolutely. Thank you.
What else is in your future? Are you working on another script or another?
Yep, working on another script. Strangely, the provider's having a resurgence, so I'm taking it to Nightmares Film Festival in Ohio. We'll be doing that.
Good.
Nice.
Trying to see whether anybody wants to, so if I don't have to, I'm trying to find somebody to, put money up so I don't have to do it myself for the next one. But
that's always nice. Yeah,
that's the thing. Got to find that. But hopefully not too far in the future, we'll be expanding. I would like to expanding into feature world, which would be great.
Awesome.
Well, nice. We're definitely excited to follow you on all the work you can create in the future, and definitely have you back on when you're starting to shoot stuff again.
Yeah, absolutely.
Even in the pre-production or production stage, we'd love to be eyes on the set if you'd allow it. Spoiler-free eyes on the set.
Absolutely. That'd be fantastic.
Well, fantastic, Matt. Thank you for joining us. Let you get back to your lovely partner who turned a great performance in and all that good stuff.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Yeah, let's do this again soon. That'd be great.
Sounds great. Thank you, Matt.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Take care. Ooh, that was a lot of fun. And I almost awkwardly said, sleep well. I don't know why my brain, because I said I went good night and sleep well, which would have been very weird.
I mean, that's not even something you say in real life.
I say it to my wife before bed. I have nice dreams, sleep well, so that would have been extra weird.
Okay. Yeah.
What a fun interview.
Yeah, he's got such an interesting perspective. And I didn't want to like fangirl too hard because that can get creepy, but
right.
I'm excited to see what other things he brings out into the world.
As am I. I do think that he conveyed a lot in those two films. I don't think that I don't think that I even noticed that The Altruist was 35 minutes long, because it doesn't feel like it's a 30-minute film.
No, because I mean, like, again, like it's every shot goes for so long, like there's only say 1, 2. I'm gonna say there's like 4 like brackets of the film from beginning to end, but including the intro outro bit, and yet like you're so engrossed in it that I guess you just don't really notice how much time is really passing.
I think that gets into, and this was a topic of conversation, of our conversations anyway, as we were talking about things, that a lot of these movies and these shorts were either made or broken in the editing of them. Like we definitely knew when something went on way too long. And this, and like he was saying, he edited it as he shot. Like he used all of the footage because he only had those particular shots to use. So that means he was like, there are some directors that do that where they're editing as they're shooting the movie to kind of shorten the amount of time so they don't have to be in the editing chair trying to take all this footage and turn it into a thing. And I think by doing so this is one of the few films that I felt did not waste any of the minutes that it had. And it was very well edited as well as very well shot.
There were times like I'd come right up to the line of like, you've held this shot too long.
And then it would move on.
And it would move on. Yeah.
I said like the makeup scene is, I think he said it's like 7 minutes, but it does get broken up because it's shot from 3, maybe even 4 different angles. So that's kind of like keeps your interest peaked. Maybe I don't know if it's just because like you keep expecting something's going to be different this time, or like maybe something's about to happen because the angle of the shot has changed. But I would not have guessed that part alone is 7 minutes long, because technically speaking, nothing's really happening.
Except everything is happening.
Except everything. Yeah, like Cable said, except everything that matters is happening at that moment,
Yeah, I'm fascinated and would gladly talk to him more about this whole finding horror in the realm of, or addressing the horror that exists in caretaking, because that was also a theme of The Provider.
Yeah, and I like that actually his focus doesn't seem to be the exploration of horror within body horror. It's the exploration of caretaking and the lines where love and the loss of dignity cannot collide. Someone once told me that the first thing that death takes is dignity. Before you ever die, the first thing it takes from you is your dignity.
Yeah, because you can't do things for yourself.
You can't, even for the most mundane, where if you're in an accident or you have a medical condition and they take you to the hospital, the first thing they do is, in the most unceremonious fashion, they just cut on your clothes. They cut your clothes up and throw you on a slab to try and fix you. And there's no dignity in that moment. It's so I appreciate what he does with that. Yeah.
I-
It's not easy also, by the way. It can be gratuitous. It'd be easy to make it be gratuitous and exploitive, and he doesn't do that.
No. I do think, and I don't know that this was ever a very deep conversation between us that weekend, or but I think it was probably all in our minds, and that was, there were definitely some of these shorts more than others, and I think the Altruist definitely takes a look at this, where it feels like horror for a world that has been in the same pandemic for nearly 2 years.
Yeah, for sure.
And
Yeah.
it speaks to us more and more, because these are particular traumas that used to be isolated to small clusters of our population, and now it's a lot more widespread and invasive. And you can talk about loss in a way that it's like, oh yeah, no, I experienced that this past year because of this and this, and oh, okay.
Right. Yeah.
A lot of those dark feelings are like much closer to the surface for a lot of more people than is typically the case. There is a lot of pain and suffering that's just barely being like reined in, the feelings that you have about that pain and suffering. And you're right, I agree. I think it shows on a lot of the films that we watched. And not just that, but like there's a certain level of banality to it after a point, especially when it keeps going on and on. It's no longer, like the body only can like have that like fear and anxiety response so long before you're just tired and you're kind of done with it. You're like, okay, well, I've been really upset for the last 90 minutes, and now I'm just a little bit bored. Like your brain can't maintain it, and then you feel bad for not staying at that level of feeling that way.
Well, and like eventually your brain just says like, this is just something I have to do now. I have processed it. I've compartmentalized it. Maybe I'll break down later, but for now I got a job to do.
This is just my life now.
Yeah.
And the Altruist in particular has that sort of vibe of like, oh, I've got this like weird thing wrong. Maybe I should go to the, and then eventually it's been going for a while. Oh, maybe I should have a doctor look at that. And then you just keep not getting to it. You keep not getting to it. Next thing you know, it is controlling your life.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely stays with you.
Yep. I am glad that, Denise, thank you again for reaching out to Matt and arranging this interview, because
you made this happen fast too.
Yeah. Like we promised folks, it's like just going to the fest and taking in the films and talking about it was not just that one show and having Gwen on. This is definitely something that's sticking with us for a while.
Right.
And also thanks to Gwen, because she actually helped facilitate reaching out to Matt.
Yeah.
She's been fantastic.
She is, yes. Gwen and Brian, but Gwen is amazing. And speaking from a pure, mercenary marketing stance, this also shows Gwen and Brian and the festival that we're not just there to get free tickets, which I know that a lot of places do that. So.
I mean, I do like to go places for free. I'm not going to pretend that that's not true.
But we're putting the work in. I mean, come on.
Yeah, and I'm still waiting to hear back, but hopefully we will be able to squeeze in one more interview in relation to the HP Lovecraft Film Fest for this year before the month is out.
Yeah, it'd be great.
Even if it isn't this month, I think she's a worthwhile artist to talk to. So.
Well, I kind of feel like once October kicks off, I feel like this show just kind of keeps things spooky through the new year anyway. Because it's winter. It's when darkness comes and we huddle around the fire to keep the darkness at bay, telling stories.
Yeah, because we just transitioned from
and
this
sipping
to
dark
Krampus.
ales and spiced wines.
And telling each other stories that make you afraid of the dark when the dark is at its longest.
Yes. It reminds me of one of my favorite lines of Hellboy 2, of all things. when the Elf King has that line, it's where he basically says, like, you people used to be afraid of the dark. I'm going to remind you why you should be.
Mm.
You know. Side note, Hellboy 2 is a fantastic film that people need to watch. I know that hardcore Hellboy fans don't like it, but I think it's better than the first one.
That's the one with the elf twins?
Yeah. Because it's more Guillermo del Toro, which is why I end up liking it more. It's very Guillermo del Toro.
It is.
Very, yeah.
The actor that plays the Elf King is also an actor that Guillermo likes using wherever he can.
Yeah.
Luke Goss, I believe is his name. He was also the weird hybrid vampire in Blade 2. Which I enjoy more than Blade 1.
I went back and watched. When I first saw it, I didn't like it, which was weird because even by then I already liked Guillermo del Toro. So I was like, huh? I don't think it's because I was expecting an extension of the first Blade.
Right.
More action. And Guillermo wanted to tell a horror movie that happened to have Blade in it. And once I the same reason why when I first saw Alien 3, I loathed it. And now it's one of my favorite horror films ever because it's just so nihilistically awful and dark. And it is not Aliens 2. Blade 2 is not Blade 2 and What You Want. It's a different story that happens to have Blade.
See, and I think that's why when I first watched it, I'm like, oh, this is exactly what I wanted when it did not have a happy ending.
Yeah. Well, which is also funny.
That is what sold me on that.
Right. Which is funny in that it's based on a comic property, because the one thing that within comic storytelling, you always want every arc to be like a different theme and tone with characters you love. Blade 2 literally does that. The first time I saw it, I went, eh.
Because it was too
10
different.
years later, I was like, you fucking hypocrite. That's exactly what you always clamor for. So why don't you go rewatch that shit?
Whereas Blade 3 felt like it was trying to recapture Blade 1.
It was.
And it was crap.
It was very much crap.
It had Parker Posey in it, and it was still crap.
Right.
Aww.
It had Jessica Biel being ripped with bare arms.
It had Ryan Reynolds.
Bearded Ryan Reynolds.
Yep.
It had a young Ryan Reynolds that looked more daddy than modern current time Ryan Reynolds, because there's no, he had a beard in that one. It was weird.
It had a very young Dominic Purcell.
It did.
As Dracula.
Oh, I need to rewatch that.
I also
There's
think
a lot of
Blade-
like good stuff I forgot about.
Yeah, it's not a good movie, just
No,
FYI.
it's not.
I think that was the same year that Ryan Reynolds did the Amityville remake, because he has the beard in that too, right?
I think so.
That is also not a good movie.
It's really, the reason it's a bad movie is that the studio and Wesley Snipes were fighting. And
Natasha Lyonne is in it.
Yeah. And
Sorry.
that all shows up on screen.
Mm.
When it comes down to, it's like, why is Blade a tertiary character in a Blade movie? That's when you realize, okay, the studio's mad at Wesley Snipes, and Wesley
Listener
Snipes
Joe in our commentary said Blade 3 had a good cast, terrible everything else.
That's absolutely true.
I mean, it brought back Chris Christopherson, who's one of my favorite grizzled old mans on film ever. He's just good at what's your character? Grizzled old man. Okay. But without all of the Clint Eastwood, racism.
Right. Man.
Yeah. Well, what are we doing next week? Do we know? I know we have a potentially tentative interview.
I think that's the only thing. Which
that's it. We also may have a little bit of a haunting review if we all end up going to the one thing.
Yes, that's Sunday, correct?
Yes.
Sunday. I'm sorry.
That's right.
I'm sorry.
Really? You're apologizing to Cable and I for using that? That
Let's
do that.
It wasn't necessary.
Let's do that, because I've never gone to this place and I've heard about it for years and I've never gone. So, all right.
I went pre-pandemic.
I've never gone. So yeah, we'll have a little haunting review. I'm sure there'll be other stuff.
There are
But-
haunts open in Portland, so and from what I hear, at least 3 of them are all taking as many precautions as they can. So if you feel comfortable enough, and it's been too long since you've been at a haunt, there's some out there. Look them up.
Yep. And then we haven't said this publicly yet, but I think we can say this now. We will not have a live show the last week in October, because that Sunday before the live show, myself, Cable, and Denise will be in my living room ahead of time recording what was going to be an incredibly wanky commentary of Bram Stoker's Dracula.
Well, I heard what was going to be.
No, it is going to be.
I'm like,
It will
wait,
be.
are we changing the plan?
No, you've missed it. We already recorded it. Timey-wimey stuff. So yeah, myself,
Oh.
Denise, and Cable will be doing a commentary on Francis Ford Coppola's Bram Stoker's Dracula, which I'm saying already right now is a masterpiece. Flawed as fuck, but a masterpiece. Yeah. So, and I'm also saying right now, get ready to hear me cry on tape. That's going to happen.
I will
Cable
have,
might get
I
moderately
might need to
choked
have a
up.
couple of drinks before we start this.
Well, we're going to have wine.
Why might I get choked up?
You have some emotions. Denise has none. No.
No, I'm a Vulcan.
I, however, am just constant tears. Constant.
You're just a walking sack of emotions.
How dare you? Also, this is true. So yeah, you guys can look forward to that for the end of the month. So that will be our Tara in the chat just jumped in. Ooh, Dracula.
So probably we'll think of something great by this time next week. But if not, then you always have our Dracula to look forward to.
That's
Mhm.
true. You always have us to fawn over Tom Waits as Redfield. One of the greatest performances in cinema ever.
It's a good one.
Yeah. Well, once again, a huge shout out to Matt Smith speaking with us about the Altruist and his filmmaking process. It was a great interview. I think one of our best filmmaker interviews ever on the show, period. Yeah,
Wow, a bold statement.
I really enjoyed it. I thought his insight into filmmaking and story was quite strong. I really enjoyed it.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So with that, I'm Aaron Duran,
I'm Pina Rita.
And I'm Cable Hashitani.
and we will speak to everybody next week. Stay spooky.
Ooh.
Recording stopped, as we were told.